F's in the chat, boys. What am I even saying? I'm not a Gen Alpha streamer. Look, all these teams, college basketball teams, that is, might still have a puncher's chance of getting in the NCAA tournament, but all three of these teams' odds are looking extremely slow, and these are three teams who many people, including myself, expected a lot more out of this year. And for that reason, they all get Fs, right? And I would discuss the reasons why. These are three teams that really disappointed. If y'all want to, comment below any teams that you think really disappointed you this college basketball season. I know it's technically the regular season isn't over yet. I mean, we still need to do conference play, but tournament play, that is. But let us know. We'd love to have a dialogue with y'all. On to team number one. Try not to talk about this too much. My UC Bearcats. Yeah, sorry to all my Bearcats fans out there. I stand with you. Just kind of stunk this year. There's really no way around it. I'm posting this after they beat Oklahoma State finally. It's nice to get a win against one of the bottom feeders in the Big 12. There we go, I guess. Look, obviously all these teams are really bad in quad one. But UC was especially bad. They were 1-11 in quad one games this year. That's a big theme with a lot of these teams, is just not winning any close games against big time teams. Like UC's best win was BYU, who they smoked at home, and then BYU went on a run, and they did beat Baylor at home as well. But just a lot of opportunities. You got to clean up the teams that aren't very good in the league, and you also have to beat some of the teams that are good in the league, at least a couple, to make it to the tournament most times. This team didn't do that, and there are a ton of reasons, of course, why they finished 13th in the Big 12. Don't let that 17-14 record fool you. Most of their wins in the conference or in the non-con were against terrible teams. Not terrible teams, but mid-majors, bye games. And teams like Georgia Tech and Dayton and Xavier, who aren't terrible teams, but those are games you should be winning. If you want to compete like UC wanted to, they were a top 25 team. We projected them to go pretty far this year. It's continuity year under Wes Miller, kind of a prove-it year for Wes, although he will be back next year, but kind of a prove-it year for him. But nobody stepped up, really. Nobody really jumped or broke out like we were hoping. Jizzle James obviously was the team's best player. He led them in pretty much every category, like points and assists, maybe steals. He was okay, but during most of the year, he really couldn't hit a shot. He started to get hot here late. Made all conference honorable mention, I think. But these two guys, I'm really disappointed in their performance. No hate. These are guys who poured a lot into UC, and I'm grateful for them. But Dan Skillings and Seamus Lukosius just didn't make the jump. There's no other way around it. Skillings obviously has one more year. Lukosius is going, but it was just a rough year for Skillings, who is a guy who is projected to be an all Big 12 guy, a guy who I said if the Bearcats were going to do well, it was because Dan Skillings made that jump from a role player with high upside to a star who could score at will on all three levels. And Lukosius is still a good shooter, but just doesn't have any athleticism to get around guys. Defensively, this team was fine, too. Nowhere close to the old Mick Cronin defensive era, but they were fine. But nobody else really stepped up. None of the transfers they got really aided that much. Dylan Mitchell, I guess, did what he was brought in to do, which is score some baskets around the rim and grab some boards. But, yeah, they need that one guy to step up. I could pretty much name a ton of teams that have a star player that's better than UC's best player. And that normally doesn't bode very well. I unless you have a super deep team where everybody is good, like Kentucky has, for example. And UC doesn't. Their bench guys were not very good. And yeah, Shon Abaev, please save us. Next up, we got Rutgers. I'm going to do a separate video on Rutgers, probably in the offseason, but when you have two potential top five picks, definitely lottery picks, when you have two top five picks coming in, you're thinking you gotta do something, right? At least make the tournament, right? Especially the way Dylan Harper was looking in the non-con when he was balling, putting up 35 points in that Eras tournament. And then Ace Bailey is just a tough shot maker, a 6'9" wing. And then you add in these two guys. Bottom left, we got Jordan Durkak, and bottom right, we have Tyson Acuff. Both of them were very high points per game scorers at the mid-major level last year. Plus, like Zach Martini, Lathan Somerville, like you expected Rutgers, especially under Steve Peichel, who is a veteran, experienced coach at Rutgers, to do something. At least make the tournament, especially in the Big Ten, which is a little weaker. But no, they didn't. They finished 11th in the Big Ten with a 15-16 record. Also had a pretty terrible conference play record. Or non-con, sorry. They beat a lot of teams, like beating Notre Dame, beating Penn State, beating Columbia, but their best two wins are against Illinois, and that was when Illinois was reeling. And then, they beat UCLA at home too. And they went on the road at Nebraska. So that's 3 good wins, I will say. But other than that, just ton of, kind of closer losses, like Kennesaw State losing that game, Princeton, and they just couldn't beat anybody really good in the Big 12. Which is a shame because I would love to see Dylan Harper do what he does in the NCAA tournament. But Rutgers fans, I'm sorry. Luckily, football's getting a little better, I guess. But yeah, tough season. Last up, we got a team with probably the best chance of making the tournament. But according to my king, Joe Lunardi, they are on the outside of the bubble, which I agree with. It is Wake Forest. I predicted Wake Forest to have a great year in a weaker ACC. We knew coming in the ACC was going to be a little weak. And a week it was. The tough part, that should say ACC. Unfortunately, it says Big 12. The tough part about Wake Forest is just when you play in the ACC after not playing a very good non-conference schedule, you kind of have to, like I said, beat up on the lesser teams and then at least win one game against a Clemson, a Louisville, or a Duke. They didn't do that. Yes, they did beat North Carolina. Yes, they did beat an unranked Michigan earlier in the year, but they just took some tough losses. And even though they're 21-10, which does seem like a good year, in the ACC, which was a weak conference, that's just not going to cut it this year. Now, they had opportunities. They played close games. And then, losing to NC State, Virginia, and Florida State, 3 very bad teams. Not the best. I put Dollar Store St. John's here because they're relatively good at defensive efficiency. They're in like the top 40 on KenPom. But their shooting percentages are awful. They can't shoot threes. And Hunter Salas, although he did take a step up, I guess, I was kind of hoping that he would be like a leading scorer in college basketball, really. I mean, he went from 18 points per game last year to 18 points per game this year on way lower shooting splits. When your best player, who's expected to break out more and become an All-American candidate, regresses, you're normally in for trouble unless some of the guys step up. Like, for example, Kadari Richmond had a little bit of a tougher year, but there were guys like RJ Lewis, Zuby Ejiofor, who stepped up for them. Not to mention Steve Holmes is not Rick Pitino. So look, 3 teams. There are many more that will flood in here in the recent days to come, but 3 teams that we expected to make the tournament but didn't. 3 disappointing teams. Let us know. Appreciate y'all. See ya.